Hey everyone, happy Monday. Tara Talmadge alongside Mike Irwin, and as always, it is time for Ask Mike. And we're just going to get right to it with our first question from Blood Red Hog, who wants to know, at this point in the season, before the College World Series, how good is this Arkansas team? Is this the best team that DVH has had?
I don't think you can say that yet because we've still got a lot of stuff to do. But here's what you can say. There's never been an Arkansas team and only one other SEC team that went 22-8. That's the best record, ties for the best record ever since they went to the 30-game format. So no Arkansas team has done that until now. They're one of only two SEC teams to win 10 series, all 10 series. That includes 5 on the road. And nobody's done that at Arkansas before. And I promise you there's no Arkansas team, I don't care what where it was, who it was, that's played this kind of schedule. Because they've played almost every team in the top 10 right now, a bunch of them in the top 20, and have a ridiculously good record against top 20, top 10, top 5, whatever you want to name. So nobody's done that. But the thing is, ultimately in baseball, you judge people on the College World Series. You judge teams that way. And of course, Arkansas had one that got within one pop-up catching foul ball. So they got to the championship series, virtually had it won, and then dropped it, and so they didn't win it. But that team came closer to winning a national championship than any other Arkansas team. So to me, that team is still the best until somebody does better. Now, if this team comes close to that, then you look at all the other stuff, how long they've been number one. Because I don't even know if an Arkansas team's been number one for how long or whatever. But there hasn't been one number one for this long. There are almost no cases on record of a team being number one as long as Arkansas has been. There are few teams, maybe some South Carolina teams when they won back-to-back national championships. But this team is incredible, and the only reason that I can't answer that question is because the season's not over yet.
Still got to wait and see. And you think about some of the talent that was on that team that you mentioned too.
Well,
like the consistent talent that we saw from some guys on that team was really impressive. So. And then if you go back to the, I think, what was it, 2018, the team, okay, that team probably had better stats than this one. I know they had a better team batting average. They were right up there in home runs with this one. And they had the traditional 3 starters on the weekend where this one doesn't. So there's some arguments you could make that team was better, but you could make some arguments on this one too. That team didn't do in league play what this one's done. Exactly. I mean,
it wasn't nationally ranked all year like this one has been.
Whatever Arkansas is doing right now is working for them right now. So.
Absolutely.
All right, AUSTIN.HOGFAN asks, so did you read into DVH pre-Florida interview that he was a little perturbed with all the love that Florida baseball teams continue to receive, and he really badly wanted to beat them this weekend, which we did?
I didn't get that. I think I've said this all year long, for a team that's been as number one as long as Arkansas has, I do think they've been a little under-publicized. If you watch the SEC network where most of this publicity comes outside, if you are a fan of a particular team, you're going to get publicity in your own area, your own state, your own part of a state or whatever. But when you look at the whole SEC, you're going to the SEC network and watching what they do. And for most of the year, to be a team that continued to be number one, Arkansas was probably under-publicized. I mean, we heard all kinds of stuff about Tennessee, all kinds of stuff about Ole Miss and Mississippi State, and it was Florida. And they're always talking about these bottom teams as if it's earth-shattering, that which one of these is not going to make the tournament. So they probably didn't get as much publicity as certainly if Florida had been number one like this all year, there'd been off the charts publicity for them all year long. So maybe that perturbs Dave Van Horn a little bit.
Understandable.
I've said this before. Part of the issue here is that Arkansas is the smallest TV market in the SEC. They have the fewest number of TV homes. And therefore, I think a lot of them look at that, and they don't necessarily look at Arkansas, but they're looking at some of the A&M, for instance. That's the Houston market. That's the number 3 or 4 TV market in America. It's the biggest one in the SEC. So you're going to give them a lot of publicity because you've got a lot of people on cable. They get the SEC network or satellite, whatever, in that area because of all those Aggie fans. And you're doing the same thing with Alabama, with Georgia, a lot of these schools. So this is part of the reason why this happens. But I will say this. it's like they were all sitting around thinking, yeah, sooner or later Arkansas is going to screw up. I think a lot of Razorback fans thought that because of the pitching was sometimes inconsistent, and then the hitting was inconsistent. And I just think a lot of people, especially non-Razorback fans, kept thinking, okay, they're going to get to the end of the year and somebody's going to move ahead of them.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden this weekend,
they just kept rolling.
They woke up and went, whoa, these guys not only won the SEC, they won it by 2 full games. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And now, today, when I watched the SEC Network, which was from last night, they're all over Arkansas. So I think they were just a little bit late in kind of figuring out that this team is really, really good. You
know, I think we all kind of thought, though, like you mentioned,
some, there was some
concern that it could drop off. Because, I mean, staying #1 all season pretty much,
it's just hard to do.
It's just unheard of.
I mean, what they did was incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Super Hog 1959 says, our starting pitchers have been inconsistent. Cops has been the stopper and the difference in many games. Do you think Cops, in another situation where we had better or more consistent starters, would be a starter himself? Could he be a starter next year?
Well, he could have been a starter, but it would have been nuts to do that.
Yeah.
Unless you just didn't have anybody else, because he can impact at least 2 games a week, and a starter is only going to impact 1, and he did it over and over again. Again, 10 SEC wins, 8 saves. That's 18 games out of the they won 22 SEC games. Yep. Now, we'd have to go look how many, I don't have the stats on those numbers for him on SEC. But if you look at the 42 wins they had, and he's impacting 18 of those directly, personally, you can't do that if he's the starter.
Exactly.
So he shouldn't have been the starter. He could have been a starter. And then, what was the other question?
Oh, could he be a starter next year?
Could be, but he's not going to be back.
I agree.
Why would he come back? I mean, Jason, I don't know, I've forgotten this. Is he not a 5th-year senior?
Yeah.
Cops.
6 years.
6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
So he's going to come back for a 7th year or whatever crazy stuff.
Cops is going to.
I mean, he's gone. If he's going to get some money out of Major League Baseball, it's going to be this year based on what he did.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right, Hoghead with Cheese, interesting name right there, says, as someone who has always listened to all the major U of A sports on the radio, I rarely get to watch our athletes compete. As such, I'm very curious as to where you think Kevin Kopps ranks on the all-time pitchers list here at Arkansas. Ooh, that's interesting.
I mean, there's not anybody like him.
Yeah, they're just so different.
I haven't seen anybody like him. Again, here's the thing that just stuns me. I understand how well the SEC does scouting reports. Look at what Matt HOBBS did on, what's the Vanderbilt kid's name? Judd.
Yeah.
The national home run leader. And they struck him out like 7 or 8 times this weekend. I think he had 1 hit. They knew how to pitch him. And Arkansas used 12 pitchers. Yeah. And they were all going after him. And I thought sooner or later this kid's going to uncork a home run, and he never did. That's because of the scouting. Yeah. Okay, so you don't think that all these teams that are playing Arkansas don't look that week and go, okay, we're going to have to face Kevin Kopps probably twice. He's the guy that's going to decide whether we win this series or not. We've got to figure out a way to do what nobody else did. So let's look at what he's really throwing there, and let's figure this out. And I kept thinking they're going to catch up to him sooner or later. The scouting is going to be too good. And what happened? Every week, this is what we had. We saw guys swinging at air. He's turning these guys in knots. He was doing it at the start of the SEC. He was doing it the last weekend. The analysts can't figure out. They're calling, oh, he's throwing a cutter. No, he's throwing a slider. No, he's throwing a cut slider. Whatever they want to call it. These guys can't hit it. And the announcers can't figure out why they can't hit it. Nobody can figure it out. Yeah. He's just doing something that hasn't been done that I've seen. His ERA is incredibly low, and it's not even close to anybody else. And I just don't remember a pitcher ever impacting. You know, Blaine Knight won a lot of games, but you look at the impact he had. 2 games almost every weekend, and you don't probably win maybe 1 of those without him. You certainly don't win 2. Yeah. So the year he had was just unbelievable.
I like all the Kevin Kopps questions we have today. Those are great.
He's a stud.
It's fun to talk about. TL Slaten is ranting. He says,
I'm tired of all these complaints about our pitching. What's wrong with these people? So we don't have 3 traditional weekend starters. Who cares? We haven't lost a series all season, and we didn't do that with hitting alone.
Well, he's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
But yet, this is what happens. There's a mindset. It's what people are used to.
Right.
And if you're used to a team that's really good in the SEC, and mostly it's some other team that you're observing last year, the year before, whatever, in 2018, Arkansas, what they have, they had these 3 traditional starters, so you could count on them. And so Arkansas's had 2 guys, then they were down to 1 guy, but there was always TBA on Sunday, and Dave Van Horn kept shifting.
He switched it this weekend.
The game 2 and game 3 starters just changed all the time.
Yeah.
And then you had this additional issue with the bullpen, because you never knew when he went to the bullpen who was going to have a problem, who wasn't, whatever. But what people never looked at was the big picture, because I don't care who he switches around. He was really honestly using his pitchers almost like you use hitters. Yeah. Nobody questions that a hitter can go into a slump or have a bad weekend.
Yeah.
But a pitcher's not supposed to do that. Here's what happened with all those pitchers that people were concerned about. You might have a bad week one weekend and then come back the next weekend.
Yeah.
And then the ultimate thing on this is the last 2 weekends of the season, that pitching got better. And there's no other way to say this. Dave Van Horn used 12 pitchers against the, what were they, number 9, number 10 team in the country. 12 pitchers, held them to 7 total runs in the 3 games. That's 2.3 runs a game. And you pitch 12 guys? You can't hold a team like Florida to 7 total runs using 12 pitchers when you've got a pitching problem. If you have a pitching problem, somebody's going to, one of those 12 or 2 of them or 3 of them are going to blow up, and they're going to score 6 runs in an inning. So why didn't that happen? It's incredible to me that some of those guys who had indeed struggled, Jackson Wiggins, we've seen him struggle. He struggled the weekend before, but he didn't this weekend. And that's my whole point, is that yeah, you might have a problem this week with this guy, but then next week you may not have a problem with him. And what you have to look at is the whole pitching staff, the sheer number of guys that Dave Van Horn has, that he can go, you know what, I'm going to take this guy and plug him in on Saturday, and I'm going to move this guy to Sunday, and then I'm going to bring this guy out first, and then this guy, and then we can go to Cops. And he always had a formula, and he had a formula that changed, but it was based on, okay, got Cops here at the end, and we got to put all these guys, and then if somebody had a problem, what did he do? They immediately got out quick. And then you go to somebody else. And that is why, that's a big reason why they're number 1, and stayed that way most of the year.
Yeah, because I mean, you think about how many teams actually have that option of just saying, oh, you know what, this guy's not going to do this today. We're just going to switch him in.
You don't have that many total arms that can be effective. Doesn't mean every one of them will be, but you've got so many options. And then that game 3 against Florida, he's pitching all these guys for 1 inning, and you know, there were 2 or 3 of them that struggled a little bit. But there was never that blow-up inning. So pitching, it looks like going into postseason play, that pitching staff is kind of coming around at the right time.
I think they're finally kind of peaking right now. All right, our next question comes from Nash WPS 18, who asks, do you rest Kevin Kopps for the SEC tournament or give him very little work?
Well, you don't need to ask me, because Dave Van Horn's already said what he's going to do. And he's definitely not going to rest him, which means you don't pitch him at all. He's going to pitch him. It will just be in a reduced role, limited or whatever. My guess is he won't go more than 3 innings. If he pitches 2 games, it would be 1 inning and then 2. Might just be 2 innings. You're not going to see him throw 60, 70 pitches. It might be 30, something like that. But further, Dave Van Horn explained that, and he said most SEC coaches will tell you about the conference tournament, that if you go into it and you decide to rest pitchers or even certain players, if you're doing it for arm fatigue or some kind of thing where you hope somebody, you know, the rest makes somebody better, that makes sense. But a lot of times what happens, if you sit down somebody that's perfectly healthy and they sit out a week, then all of a sudden you're in regional play and they're out of sync. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to see all of the traditional 5, 6 guys that they normally, mainstream guys that they normally use, some, but we're going to see less of them, and then you're going to see more of those other 6 or 7 guys. Now, that probably means they're not going to win the tournament, but I'm not going to sit here and say they won't, because Dave Van Horn used that approach on Saturday against Florida, and I thought they're going to lose this game. I mean, he's pitching like he pitched his starter for 2 innings, and then from that on, it was just one guy an inning. So you're pitching everybody. He's got his best catcher sitting down. He's got a backup guy out in left field. And you're thinking, okay, you're not going to win this game because you're just resting people. And then what happens? They not only won it, they blew
mess around and win.
They blew Florida's doors off. So I won't say that they won't win the SEC tournament, but it doesn't look like they will, because I think he knows it doesn't matter.
The more important thing is right around the corner. So Mousetown wants to know, what did Costu say to Florida's home run hitter? The ump got involved, Florida's coach got mad, I heard DVH was mad. Was there bad blood between the Hogs and Gators?
No, I don't think so. I think that was a Costu thing. And he was pitching again against this #1 home run hitter guy, and they'd been striking him out. And you don't have to ask what he said. You could read his lips. It was pretty obvious. He pointed to the dugout and said, "Sit the blank down." So we know what he said. Now, here's what happened. He walks over to the dugout, and the umpire meets him and gives him what for. Then Dave Van Horn tells him, you shouldn't have done that. And then Kevin O'Sullivan, Florida's coach, comes out, and it looked like to me he was trying to get the umpire to kick him out of the game. Well, there's no point to that, because he's already pitched his 1 inning, and
so
he's not going to be in the game again. So I don't think that would have mattered, but I think Costu probably just got all excited about striking out a guy that hits all these home runs, and somebody should have reminded him, everybody else is striking him out too.
It's not just you.
You didn't do any great thing here, bub. So.
All right, Arkansas Redneck says, I like the story you wrote on pinch hitter Charlie Welch. It's always nice when out-of-state kids come in with as much passion to be a Razorback as those who grew up here. I agree.
It's really an unusual story, because he goes to this high school in South Florida. He's the #7 catcher in Florida. He's got a pretty good reputation as a good defensive player, but he's not a big hitter. He's got some power, but he doesn't hit for an average. So, but he comes to Arkansas's camp in high school, when he's in high school. And he's like, I want to come here. What do I have to do? And Dave Van Horn looks at him, and the staff looks at him, and they just go, well, we want want a better hitter out of it. If we're going to recruit a catcher, we want somebody that's a better hitter. So they passed on him. So then, I think it was South Carolina, he committed to them. He thought he was going there. Then they had a coaching change. Then their new coach said, nah, we don't want you. So now he doesn't have a spot again. But he doesn't give up. That's the thing you learn about Charlie Welch, is you can't stop him. He doesn't quit. So he ends up at Pepperdine. Okay, at Pepperdine, he was a starter as a true freshman. And he hit for some power. He had a Grand Slam home run in his first game as a college player.
Wow, I didn't know that.
That's pretty impressive.
That is really cool.
And he hit some doubles and hit several other home runs, but he didn't hit for average. That was his problem, and he batted like .211. And I don't know what caused him to leave there. I wasn't able to find out, but he decided to go back home to Florida and go to a junior college. Maybe he was hoping to up his hitting average a little bit and then try to get back to another major college team. So he plays at a junior college for a year, and his batting average goes up. I think he was hitting like .240, something like that, .250, and he's really hitting home runs. So he's starting to come around some at the plate. And then COVID hit, and he was off to a really good start. But, we know what happened in 2020. Just everything came crashing to an end.
Just a halt.
And all of these baseball programs, like Arkansas, just shut down. Everybody got sent home. And for a long time, we would figure out what's going on here. Well, what happened was the players started trying to figure out, okay, what do we do? Well, they organized some summer leagues in Springdale, and they were playing over there. Well, they did that everywhere. And Welch ended up going all the way to Texas. I don't know how that came about, but he shows up in Texas in a summer league. And Dave Van Horn happens to be there and sees him. He comes up to Van Horn again and says, I want to come to Arkansas. Look, watch me. So Van Horn starts watching him, and Dave said he hit several home runs with a wood bat, which is hard to do, or harder to do. So he said, we knew then he was a hitter. So he said, okay, we will offer you but we're loaded next year.
Right.
So if you come in, I can't promise you that you'll play or how much you'll play. It might be 2 years from now before you play. And he said, I'm coming.
Yeah.
So he came, and then he got here in the fall, and they saw that he really had power. And so, but then what do? You don't tell Matt Goodhart, I'm sorry, Matt, you came back here, but we're going to use this guy as the DH. Right. And then you can't say, well, okay, we'll play him as a catcher, because what do you do with Opitz?
Right.
And you can't say we're going to use him at first base, which is this other position, because we got Brady Slavens. So they finally concluded, well, we'll use you as a pinch hitter.
Yeah.
Now, what did he do as a pinch hitter? Well, right off the bat, he figured out that Van Horn had an issue when teams make a pitching change. They typically brought in a lefty to go against Arkansas's hitters, and that was a problem. So Welch figured out, okay, I can hit lefties. Van Horn figured it out, and what he explained that what he did when he was sitting in the dugout, he would always look at the other team's bullpen. And when he saw a left-hander get up, he'd go figure out who the guy was, look at his number, and he'd start doing a scouting report on him and figure out what I have to do to hit this guy. And Van Horn said it was pretty incredible. Well, he ended up, he's right now at this point, he's hitting like 408 or something, 421, some crazy thing.
And like a solid number
as
of appearances.
A pinch hitter. Yeah. You know, and I think it was, who said this? It was Slavens? Yeah, I think it was Slavens that said, you don't understand or you don't realize if you play college, unless you play college baseball, how hard it is to do what he's doing. Yeah. Because a lot of times we get up there and it's the third go-round with a pitcher before we figure him out.
Exactly.
He's got one shot, and the guy's just come in the game typically. And so for him to hit over 400 in that situation is incredible. Yep. Now, he was doing all this kind of under the radar screen. I mean, I knew who he was, but I wasn't thinking a lot about him. I don't think anybody else was. Okay. Then he gets up and wins the SEC. Turns out he wins the SEC title for Van Horn, his first ever, with that walk-off hit in Game 2 against Florida. And he's running around, and two things happen. He did it, but he did it in front of 11,000 for the first time. Awesome. So now everybody sees this. There's no being anonymous.
Oh, no.
He's running around out in the infield. They're chasing him. People are going bonkers. So he becomes a hero instantly then. Then he comes back the next day and comes back in as part of that 7-run inning where they beat Florida 9-3 or whatever. So, you know, he said it's surreal. Suddenly being in front of all these fans, being able to do what he always thought he would be able to do and always imagined what it would be like here. But this is not an Arkansas kid. No. This is a guy from Florida that always wanted to play here and somehow figured out a way to make it happen. And think about this. Dave Van Horn blew him off, should have probably never been here, happens to run into him in East Texas, ends up giving him an offer finally, and what happens? He ends up getting the hit that gives Dave Van Horn his first ever SEC championship overall. Is that not fate or what?
No, I love it.
So it's a great story.
And also, I love when we talked to him after that game, after they won the SEC title. He was just, the first thing he said was, I'm just so humbled by the opportunity that Dave Van Horn has given me. And I was like, that just says a lot about who he is.
Yeah, he could be upset. He could say, you know, they don't give me a shot.
Right.
I mean, he's got I've been reading some of the comments on Hogville of the baseball forum, and a lot of these guys are talking about his bat speed is incredible. Yeah. He does this, he does that. They're analyzing why he's good now because they've suddenly discovered
Everyone's
him.
a fan.
They've discovered him now. Well, guess what? He's probably now he's going to be a celebrity the rest of the year, and then he's probably going to. My guess is he will be the DH next year.
All right, let's move on. We've got Semper A. Hog who says, I'd like to see the SEC award an overall athletic program champions trophy, one that recognizes the combined quality of a university's athletic programs. It's obvious who the trophy would go to this year. I'm really impressed with the job that the whole department has done.
There is no such award in the SEC. There is a national award. It's called the Director's Trophy. Directors refer to athletic directors. So the idea is whoever has the best overall athletic program in the country, that would be all sports, you're honoring the athletic director because he's the one that heads that program.
In charge of it, yeah.
Arkansas usually does pretty well in that. I don't think they're ever going to win it because they don't compete in the number of sports that some other schools do.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So you get points for how well each of your sports does.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what the formula is, but you know, if you've got 5 top 10 teams or whatever, however they rate that, you know, let's say another team just maybe doesn't have as many top 5s or top 10s, but they've got so many programs that finish like 18th, 17th.
Yeah.
They're going to go up because of the formula. So I don't think Arkansas is going to ever win that thing, but if they had one for the SEC, come on.
I mean, it's pretty.
You swept all 4 track titles in conference. That's indoor, or well, actually be 6, indoor, outdoor, and cross country in each of those 3, each of those 2 sports. So that's 6 right there in track.
Yep.
Then you won baseball outright.
Yep.
You shared softball. What else? What am I missing here? What'd they do in soccer?
Soccer made it to the tournament. They made it to the NCAA tournament.
So they didn't win the SEC this year in soccer, but
they won the SEC.
Didn't win the tournament. So they won the SEC, didn't win the tournament.
Right.
So that's another one.
Yeah.
I think we determined maybe a couple of weeks ago that, what was it, volleyball was the only one that didn't go postseason?
Maybe.
I think so.
Because they shrunk the field.
They shrunk the field. So, I mean, Arkansas would win. If they had something like that in the SEC, Arkansas would blow everybody's doors off this year. And they did it in a COVID year.
Which is just impressive.
Yeah, that blows you away that I could do a whole thing. In fact, I'm going to do a whole thing this summer on all the challenges that they faced and then how they managed to negotiate through all this and really handled it. They didn't lose games.
Nope.
We saw over and over teams canceling games against Arkansas in various sports, but Arkansas didn't do that.
Yeah.
The whole athletic department deserves a big pat on the back for the way they handled COVID.
Yeah. Shout out to Hunter Yurchek. Yep. All right, Terry Anderson wants to know, did Sam Pittman just get a new contract? He's only been here a year. Why the new contract?
Didn't really get a new contract. He kind of got his year back that he originally had. I think the way they explained it was a restart because of COVID. You came in here, you had this weird COVID thing, so we're just going to start all over again. So in effect, he just got an extra year. All the salary, all the bonus perks, if he does certain things, that all stays the same. So it's not a new contract. It's just, okay, we had COVID, let's start all over again with Sam Pittman.
Exactly. Not a bad idea. But I am interested to see what happens with the rest of the staff, because now he's got the extra year. Do you eventually extend?
Well, you know, we saw, we already saw one coordinator get a big pay raise. Yeah. But what's interesting is that he made some staff changes. Some assistant coaches were gone.
Right.
And we all thought, well, I thought he had a good staff to begin with, but apparently they didn't meet his standards with recruiting.
With recruiting,
and that shows how important recruiting, and their recruiting has jumped up.
Really well.
I was talking to Otis, who does all of our recruiting. He's a recruiting guru, and he's been one for 20 to 30 years, because I don't follow it as much as he does. And I said, has Arkansas ever been ranked this high in recruiting? And they were up there knocking on the top 10, like 12th, something like that. I don't know where they are. It changes every week.
Right.
And Arkansas is getting close to that. I don't think they've ever had a year. Now, it's not over, but I don't think they've ever been where they are right now. So we'll see if they'll stay there.
All right, Lanny has our next question and wants to know, most Hog fans hate the Longhorns, but they are from Arkansas. You're from Texas. What's your beef with UT?
I think that goes all the way back to when I was 11 or 12 years old. I had a good friend that loved college football. I wasn't so much into it myself, but he was. And he was a Razorback fan. I've said this before. He was the only Arkansas Razorback in my hometown, because we're out there west of Lubbock. Yeah. And he just loved SWC games. And he told me one day at school, this was in the spring of maybe before I was 11 or 12, he said, hey, you know, we can go to games for $6 if we sit in the opposing section with the opposing team's fans. Oh. And he said, so we could save our money this summer and we could buy season tickets to all the games, home games. This would be like 5 home games and you're paying $6 each. Yeah. So that's still a lot of money back then, but you could earn that much in the summer. So we started doing that. And I do remember that every other year when Arkansas came in, it was really good for him to sit with all those Arkansas fans, because he knew all about Arkansas and they did. Yeah. And they would, and then he could tell them all about Texas Tech, because he knew about Tech too. So he would tell all the Arkansas, this guy's no good, this guy's really good, you better watch out for him. Yeah. And they had these great discussions. And I enjoyed that part of it. And I really didn't have an issue with most of the other fans. Texas, I did, because their fans would come in with their nose up in the air. They were arrogant. They made fun of Lubbock, which we all out there thought Lubbock was the big city.
Oh, yeah.
It's a big city. I mean, I live in a town of 3,000 people. Lubbock's 150,000. It's a giant place.
Yep.
They're making fun of it. It's pee-wee. It's stupid. They're making fun of all the farmers. My cousins were farmers. I grew up around farmers. I spent a lot of time on farmers. I didn't want to hear anybody say farmers are stupid.
Yeah.
Make fun of their tractors and all this stuff. So I just didn't like these guys at all.
Yeah.
And it just spread. Now, I haven't been around them much since Arkansas left the Southwest Conference. We occasionally play them, so I don't have to deal with them much. But we're going to have to deal with them this September because Arkansas is going to play them. So I went on to Hogville, and there's a thread where a guy on there went on to a message board, and it's called Surly Horns. That's the name of this message board. And he went on and he started showing what these Texas Longhorn fans were saying about this game that's coming up. So I'm going to read some of these. So the first one is from a guy named VICK Mackey. If we can pop that up, is that there somewhere? Okay, VICK Mackey on Surly Horns. The UT-Arkansas rivalry was way before my time. My grandpa has stories of when Texas played them. 2 questions. 1, is Fayetteville a crap hole? 2, why did they leave the Southwest Conference before it disbanded? Then Walden Ponderer answers him. He says, 1, Fayetteville is worse than a crap hole. 2, they left the Southwest Conference because they are inbred yokels.
Wow.
These are Longhorn fans, people. Now, some guy who calls himself Stash says, and he's defending Fayetteville a little bit, Fayetteville is a decent town. The rest of the region stinks. It's basically one giant conglomerate of suburbs, chains, and strip malls galore. Some people like that. I think it's awful.
Brutal.
And then Hobbs comes back and says, I think Fayetteville is cool, no, Hobbs says that he thinks Fayetteville is cool, but he hates the Razorbacks, and he says, it got nothing bad to say about the town itself. Actually like it quite a bit. That said, to hell with Arkansas football and basketball. Despise seeing their drooling hordes at the Southwest Conference tournament at Reunion Arena, a.k.a. Barnhill South. When I was a kid, we hated those jerks almost as much as OU.
That's really saying something.
And finally, Butch is mad because younger UT fans don't hate Arkansas enough. Well, and that's a problem around here, too, not hating UT as much. He says the hate for those jackasses should be 10 times what it currently is. It's like a majority of the current fan base never knew that we were in the same conference and it was a pretty heated rivalry. Now it's just fat Bielema jokes, and he misspells Bielema. So,
wow.
Those are your
Longhorn
fans. These are the guys, some of them be coming to town trying to check out whether Fayetteville is a crap hole. Somebody should let them know it's been voted as one of the top 5 places to live in the country for about 3 or 4 years in a row.
It's like the #1 place in the SEC, too.
Exactly. So they'll be coming in here, they'll find out they're wrong, and then they'll get beat, and they'll go home mad again.
Right. Well, I do have to say
this is why I don't like them.
But the young fan thing, that definitely is, I mean, that plays into even the guys on the teams. Like, they don't really see
That's
Texas
an Arkansas
as a huge
problem.
rivalry.
The older Arkansas fans are mad at the younger Arkansas fans because they don't hate Texas as much as they do. And it's because they haven't played in so long.
Right. So maybe this will just renew that rivalry.
But it's coming.
It's coming back.
And it's on ESPN in prime time. It's going to be great.
Prime time. Oh, that's going to be such a fun game. Maybe we can have a packed out stadium for that one.
I think they're counting on
everyone.
that. Fill that place up.
I'm so excited for that.
Fill it up.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike segment. We hope to see you back here again next Monday.